So you got your microphones, perfect.
Okay. If someone does not know you, how would you describe yourself in short words?
I have been making games for my whole life. Since I was 19, now I'm 56. And it's been a pleasure to have done this all this time.
Well, I've been one of the very lucky people to have been involved in games since 1983. It's almost from the beginning. So it's a great pleasure to see and witness the development of the entire industry.
At what time in the past you were sure to do something with computers as a job? At what time you decided to do things with computers, with games as a job?
As a main job, and when you realized that it could be
okay. Well, my getting into games was a complete accident. It's an interesting story. I even wrote a book, Life is a Game, which I brought here so I can sign copies for those who'd like to read my story. So I came to England from Turkey without speaking a word of English, and a friend changed my life, really. He encouraged me to buy my first computer. It wasn't an Amiga, it was a 1983 Sinclair ZX Spectrum. So that's how I started my gaming career.
Jon, a lot of people know your games like Sensible Soccer, but Sensible Soccer was, of course, not the first football game you did. Can you tell us a story about the first football game you did and why it was not called Sensible Soccer?
Yeah, so I'm a big football fan and I've made lots of football games, and I'm making one today called Sociable Soccer. But the very first one was a game called, well, we made a football game in 1987, 1988, just after Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit. And we wanted to call this game Sensible Soccer. And we took it to a bunch of different publishers at the time, on the Commodore 64 this was. And we took it to Microprose, and Microprose said, we really like your game, but we want to change the name to Microprose Soccer. And the reason we said yes is because they offered us £30,000 advance, which was quite good in those days, back in '88. So we accepted this offer. But of course, when we went on to make our next football game, Microprose Soccer did very well. At the time it came out, CMVG called it the best sports game on any platform, which was really cool for us. But the next time we did a football game, we took it round to Virgin and Renegade and various companies. But we absolutely insisted it must be called Sensible Soccer. And actually, Virgin said, we like your game, but we want to call it Virgin Soccer. And we said, we've already done that once before, no way. So we went with Renegade, and it was Sensible Soccer, and the rest is history. Yeah.
You really would have played a game called Virgin Soccer. I don't really...
I don't know. From our perspective, if they'd have given us like a lot of money, we'd have probably said yes again, but they didn't. It was a normal amount, yeah.
Okay, Mev, a lot of people do not know that you were involved in a part of the Last Ninja series. What was your role at Last Ninja 3 in 1991?
Well, I coded Last Ninja 2 on the ZX Spectrum and Amstrad. I did both versions alongside the 64 version, which was a great game. I think a lot of people think it was the best of the series. And I set up Vivid Image with John Tweedy and Hugh Riley, who I worked with together. But after I set up Vivid Image to work on Hammer Fist, Time Machine, and of course First Samurai, I helped with Last Ninja 3 as a producer. So that was my role. I helped the team develop the game.
Yeah, Jon. Of course, we're sitting here because you have made some precious games, and one of those has a very memorable music. And this is always a story, because in Germany they said, oh, you cannot play a game with someone singing War Has Never Been So Much Fun. What in hell came you to mind that this would be the best thing to to name a song or to give it a text like War Has Never Been So Much Fun?
I don't know. I mean, I'm a songwriter as well as a game maker, so we were working at the time with Richard Joseph, who's a brilliant musician, not just on our games, but on Bitmap Brothers and other games as well. And I came up with this idea for this little bass. Started with the bass line, and then the reggae chords, and then the melody, and California is about war. Why not? War has never been so much fun. I mean, it's obviously ironic, but it's very much the style of British kind of humor,
of course.
So it's in that spirit, like a bit like Madness or the Specials or these kind of bands from that kind of era. It's just a little bit of irony, a little bit of Blackadder.
I even forget the reggae melody. If you that it has a reggae melody. Yeah. Okay.
Mev, you went back into Turkey after some years. Can you tell us something about the gaming industry there? You were the director, the president of the association there. How could you compare gaming there and in other parts of the world?
Well, obviously, I did a lot of games in the UK. I became sort of one of the top game developers in the UK. And I decided to go back to Turkey because there wasn't any game development to speak of. So I went back to Turkey at the end of 2000 and kick-started the Turkish gaming sector. So I'm effectively the founding father of the Turkish gaming sector, which is very, very big now. In fact, I think it was last year or a year before, a mobile game was sold to Zynga for $1.8 billion. So I'm quite proud of my achievement in Turkey.
Another soccer question for you. You did sociable soccer, a sort of sensible soccer in a new version. I played an early version. Can you tell us the actual development, actual state of the thing? Are you working still on it? Is it ready?
Yeah, okay. This is a good story, and it connects with Mev. So, in about 2008, I think it was, Mev was working in one of his companies called Sobi in Turkey, which was one of these companies which founded the industry there. He was working on a football game called ICANN Football, and he invited me to go over and do some consulting to help. And this actually gave me the inspiration to think about making a new football game, slowly. So, but for ages I didn't find a team that could make this game. And then I was in Helsinki at a games event, a pocket game event. And I had actually been doing some karaoke on the stage with a guy singing the Beatles song. And I came off and I met these Finnish developers who said, they chatted with me, showed me a demo of an ice hockey game they'd made. And I thought, you just might be the guys to make a football game with. So we started making sociable soccer. It's now been 7 years in development. It's been very arduous and slower than we wanted. But we have been out on Apple Arcade for 3 years now. And actually we're due to come out on PC at the end of this year. Maybe the beginning of next year if we're a bit late. And then console, hopefully the first half of next year. And then actually we're looking for full mobile as well. So it's still going. It's been slow because we've hit basically development problems. We've never stopped working on it, and it's really exciting. We're just acquiring the FIFA Pro license at the moment to put the real players in there. We're going for a distinct style. So it's got the gameplay is not exactly the same as Sensible Soccer. That's not possible, but it's online. You collect cards to build a squad up. And we're going for a style of presentation which is a bit more like Fortnite style characters, but playing football. So we're trying to find a way of taking the playability and fun of Sensible Soccer, but bringing it to a modern audience. So hopefully some of you, us older guys, will like playing it, but also hopefully your kids will also like playing it, because they're the future market for non-boring simulation games like FIFA and actually having fun arcade football, but this time online as well as offline. So that's kind of where we are with it.
I still have one thing in mind which won't let me go. If I remember your Cannon Fodder game, you have the small soldiers, and very, very tiny, very funny looking. I always remember that it looks a bit like Among Us, which is a game common in the last years. And I always thought it has the same shape of the figures. It always like like from a board game, no hands, no arms. Have you ever thought about making your that's not of course not copyrightable, but your figures doing more than just playing soccer or doing cannon fodder?
Well, actually, these little guys first appeared in Megalomania. So I was the artist on all of our games up to Cannon Fodder was the first game I did not do the art on, but Megalomania was the first game to have the little guys in. And actually, when we were waiting to finish Megalomania and we knew we were going to do a new football game, I started to dress these little guys up in football kits, and they were running around the Megalomania world. And that's how we found the camera angle for Sensible Soccer from Megalomania. So they first went to Megalomania, then to Sensible Soccer, then to Cannon Fodder, and then to Sensible Golf. And then they kind of retired.
Oh, that's horrible.
Well, they had a nice...
Retiring with golf, that's...
that's so our best game either.
That's so upper class.
Yeah. Well, they were like getting on by then, you know. Because these little guys, their life cycle goes very fast, you know.
Sorry.
Just saying, some of them died in Cannon Fodder as well, so the survivors went to play golf.
Mev, why did you wrote a book about your career now? At what time you thought about doing, I had to write a book about all the things that happened? About your book. Yeah. Why did you wrote it now, and why did you think it's a good idea to tell now the people what happened in your life?
Why now? What did you
Well, I've been thinking about writing my book for a long time. I left Turkey briefly in 2015. I lived in Barcelona, and I visited a friend in the UK, and he suggested that I should write my book, and he said Barcelona is the best place to do it in. So that's what inspired me to start the book. And then I lived in London for 2 years, and then moved back to Istanbul. So it took me about 3 years to write the book, and I really wanted to share my story, and a lot of people who read it seem to find it inspirational because it's an interesting life story, and I'm glad I did write it.
What games from Sensible Software did you play in your years? What people from what games from Sensible Software do you know? Did you play the games from them?
Which games of ours did you play from Sensible?
Again, if you read my book, you'll find out that I don't play games.
Okay.
I actually enjoy making games, and I actually admit in my book that I cannot play games. I'm not good at it because playing games also requires natural talent, just like playing football in real life. To be honest, I only played very few games, but I played with Jon a few times, obviously, Sociable Soccer, and also my own game, I Can Football, which is world's first 11 versus 11 online soccer game.
Jon, do you play modern football games besides your own games? Do you love some modern games on games or consoles or computers?
You love loot boxes?
I love loot boxes. I mean, no, I love people paying €20 for a game and not needing loot boxes to make money. You know, I'm old-fashioned in the monetization, but we have to embrace new monetization, or we can't make modern games. So, I don't personally. If people have got a problem with loot boxes, just give us $20 from the start, and we won't need to loot box the money out of you. You know, it's really, really simple. You know, game makers weren't the people who invented zero price point games. These were made by mobile platforms using our product to sell their hardware by giving our product away for free, which led to this whole free-to-play stuff, which ends up with loot boxes. It's a bit greedy, in my opinion, to loot box a game where you've already got some money up front as well. That's a little bit dubious. But anyway, remind me of the question. I got distracted.
If you would now play a soccer game, like a simulation soccer game, what would you choose to play if you play a modernized version?
I mean, in looking at the market now, FIFA is so dominant. And it's a weird market because Pro Evolution Soccer, you know, really was going down fast against FIFA. FIFA was outselling Pro Evo Soccer 19-1, and I heard their sales went to a tenth of what they were within a few years. They really went down, and now of course both of them are rebranded. You've got eFootball and you've got EA Soccer, whatever they're going to call their game. It's a great time for us to be launching a new football brand in sociable soccer. FIFA, I played it when I was doing a lot of judging panels for BAFTA, and I was playing the games. The last one I seriously played was probably 10 years ago, which I actually thought was pretty good compared to the early FIFAs I played. Pro Evo I used to play a bit earlier. I've played a bunch of mobile games. I haven't seen a really good mobile, I have to say, Pocket Gamer called our game the best football action game on mobile, on Apple Arcade, with sociable soccer, and I'd agree with that. I don't think there's a lot of good quality stuff on mobile. There's a bunch of decent football management games out there, so I don't really know. I would choose to play sociable soccer, of course. But you know, it's an interesting time for us. It's a great time to be launching a football game. There's quite a lot of pressure to get it right. The main problem with making modern games is technically things are very challenging right now. There's so many factors to bear in mind on a cross-platform game. Going online, offline, running things at speed, data protection, loads and loads of SDKs, different monetization systems. We're across 10 platforms from mobile to PC to console, so it's complex. But I mean, I don't particularly like FIFA, but I think it's got better, and we'll see what happens next. Is my answer there? Yeah.
Mev, your heart beats for soccer too?
Yeah.
Your heart beats for soccer?
I love soccer. I mean, I played it in real life, but like I said, I did ICANN football game back in 2008, as John mentioned. It was the world's first 11 versus 11 soccer game. And I also, at the time, could see the importance of esports. That's when I set up Turkish Digital Games Federation, which is world first. And as you know, now esports is a huge thing. And apparently new FIFA has broken a new record again. Yeah.
Actually, about football in general, so like Mev, I love football. Mev, we used to have a sensible software real football team back in the day, and Mev actually played for us before on the wing. We weren't that great in those days. In the UK now, I manage a team in the area in Cambridge. I still play a bit. I'm trying to get to 200 caps with this team. I'm getting older, but I'm the manager, so I start myself for 15 minutes and take myself off, and we finished second in the league, which is a great achievement. I played a five-a-side tournament last weekend in Mallorca, which my team won, which is great, because I've tried 14 times to win this thing. And I've got to say, in Mönchengladbach, I'm a Norwich City fan, and like all Norwich City fans, absolutely love Daniel Farke. So if anyone's from Mönchengladbach here, I really hope he does well for Mönchengladbach, because we love him as Norwich fans. So yeah, football's really important.
And incidentally, when I realized I was coming to Mönchengladbach, I used to love Mönchengladbach team. In the old days, you had a very great team here.
They had, of course.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's time for some questions from the audience. If someone wants to more know, please raise your hand.
Irgendwelche Fragen? Oh, okay, ich gehe mal runter, bleib da.
Nothing to see.
Yeah, hi. What was your worst and best experience during the Amiga times back in the days developing games? The worst and the best things you both.
I'll start with the best. I think the best thing was that the UK, I think, played a huge role turning Amiga into a games machine. As you know, Commodore launched it as a business machine. So I'd like to think that with games like First Samurai, we did make a contribution to Amiga's success. And I was also heavily involved with Commodore 64 GS system, so I had a very close relationship with Commodore. And I think Amiga was a brilliant games machine. And that's why we had so many great games. The worst thing, I really don't remember any negative experiences. I mean, we really enjoyed making games on the Amiga because it was just so different from the Spectrum and 64.
I mean, I've got to say, I've been making games since 1985. Mev has since 1983. The Amiga was without doubt the best machine I've ever made games on. And the reason is because at that time, you know, everything's about windows of opportunity. It was a great machine for its time. It was a free platform to publish on. But also the hardware itself was very self-contained. So there's been times, I'm a game designer, I'm not a programmer, so game designers kind of, and I'm also an artist, so you sit around as a designer, you're waiting for the programmer to do the next thing, so you have an idea, then you wait for them to execute it. There's been two periods in making games where things have got very slow. The first period was when we went to early 3D graphics without graphics engines. And I would estimate roughly, making a game on the Amiga, 75% of the time you focused on making the game. Actually the game parts. When you go to the early 3D graphics stuff in about 1993, 94, 95, now you're talking about 75% of the time on just making the graphics appear on the screen, and maybe 25% of the time making the game. So as a designer, this is frustrating. Right now we're in a modern era which is similarly frustrating. Engines like Unity and Unreal have sorted out the graphics, but there's so many technical issues, especially from server to client stuff, all these protocols, all these platforms not compatible with each other. That's really not fun from a designer perspective, wanting to just make something change. So the great thing about the Amiga was the hardware made it possible to focus on the product you're making rather than making the hardware work properly, if that makes sense. And we had so many great games. We had SWAS came out, the best thing I'll probably ever make in my life. Meant to be one of the 10 most influential games of all time from the Amiga, which is great. And the worst thing about the Amiga was when it ended, to be honest, because we never wanted to move away from that. A Sensible Software, we were probably the top developer in Europe at the time on the Amiga when that finished. We didn't want it to end, but market forces made it end because no one would buy Amiga games anymore. Sadly, that's what happened. So, yeah, I agree with Mev. There's nothing wrong with it. It was fantastic.